Good evening and a very warm welcome to you all here on the Open Door Show from Property CEO. I mean, you know it's Property CEO because Ian's got it on his screen. I don't actually because I'm not in the office. I mean, it's not like we've had an argument or anything like that. Just a bit of time away every now and then from each other is a good thing. So I'm up in the sunny Midlands. Well, it's not sunny now because it is 7 o'clock this evening. If I look out the window of my meeting room here, it's right by the airport. It's pretty dark actually, so it's not sunny. Anyway, I'm here, of course, with the other half, Mr. Ian Child. Do you want to say good evening, Ian?
Good evening, everybody. Glad to have you with us. I'm afraid I'm in the same old place, so no airports nearby, but at least I have a backdrop.
Good stuff, absolutely. No, it's great to have you with us. And as always, over the next 45 minutes, we're going to be taking a deep dive perhaps, into the world of small-scale property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. We're going to be covering some of the latest news items. Also, in Open Door, we talk to some of the movers and shakers in the world of property, and people that can give us a bit of an inside track into what's happening in the good old world of property. Also shining the spotlight on some areas we think might be a good opportunity for new and existing developers to take a look at.
Good stuff. Above all, though, I think it's important. We always say this, and I say this every week we do this show. You've got to have fun. We're here for a bit of fun because life's too short. It'll disappear very quickly, and certainly as you get older, it goes much faster. I'm absolutely certain of that. So please, above all, have a bit of fun. We do need you though to join in. So please put questions in the chat box. Obviously, anything that you've got, particularly when we talk about the subject this evening in a minute. So Ian, what have we got coming up this evening?
We know that a lot of people put property development into the too difficult pile. And for those people that try development, they often have a bit of a habit of making things maybe a bit overcomplicated, maybe a bit too complex. So hopefully tonight, Rich is going to enlighten us as to why developing property successfully is probably a little bit easier than you thought it might be. So no pressure then, Richie.
No pressure at all. Absolutely no pressure at all. Who's on this evening? Let's have a look. Raj is on. Tanya's on. Hello, Tanya. Cheryl's on. Andrew's on. Andy's on. Who else is on? Giovanni's on. Peter, Emily, Henry, Jenny's on. Jenny's on twice. It's probably Jenny and Roman on there. Roma's on. Rory's on. Hello, Rory. Good to see you. We should catch up again, my friend. Roma's on. I just said Roma. Chiten's on. Sophie's on. Mesh is on. Philip's on. They're all coming on. Blimey, who says what? Good evening, gents, says Rory O'Mara. That's very formal, very polite. I like that. Jenny says, good evening, guys. Great to see you again. Roman Jenny here. Philip Donovan says, Philip Donovan. Okay, what's that? I don't know what that is. Yeah, coffee on me, says Rory. Excellent. Rory's going to buy me a coffee. Well, Rory, that's a waste of time because I don't drink tea or coffee. How about a small glass of wine or a beer? That'll do me. Happy to have that. Giovanni says, good to see you again this evening. Looking forward to it. Oh, we are looking forward to it as well, Giovanni. And Amelia says, great to be here. Missed last week. Oh, missed last week. We had a great week last week, didn't we?
That's fabulous. Absolutely. Yeah, you missed a treat there.
Yeah, Sue Sims last week. In fact, I was with Sue today, and I just said how much we enjoyed it, just to big her up a little bit, of course. But yeah, if you have missed last week, it was all about social housing. So please, please, please go back and listen to that recording on there. So before we talk about tonight's subject, in terms of about how easy is development or not easy, or maybe going about it in the right way, any news items, Ian? Any news items?
Well, there was a few bits and pieces. We always kind of like keep abreast of what's happening in the kind of transformation in the high street, and there's been a few big changes in some of the landmark properties in London in particular, but also elsewhere around the country. And we've just heard that the former flagship House of Fraser store in Oxford Street is set for a transformation. So planning permission has been granted to refurbish and extend the store. Mixed-use development, 6 floors, flagship retail, leisure, swimming pool, a 17,000-foot rooftop restaurant, which will be one of the largest rooftop venues in London. No kidding.
7,000 square foot, 17,000 foot up in the air.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 17,000 square foot. Interesting, though. Yeah, interesting. So that all kicks off, and of course there's quite a lot going on with a lot of downsizing happening from the large corporates, and then vacating office buildings and vacant office buildings, quite a lot around at the moment, and a lot of repurposing going on. But that's quite a biggie. There was also some news on the planning side. Obviously, we're still sort of waiting to see what's going to happen with regards to the planning reform. And we heard from the Housing Minister, Christopher Pincher, this week, in fact today, I think, who said that the planning bill will be early next year, inverted commas, and channeled through the levelling up prism, whatever that means. So I think levelling up is basically making sure that everything is kind of a little bit fairer nationwide, so getting rid of some of the more local discrepancies. Yeah, he's basically said that it will, so this is a definitive view from the government. The final response to the planning white paper will probably come forward in the earlier part of next year. So whether that's going to be, I don't know, 29th of June or one suspects perhaps first quarter, but obviously they keep getting asked. And relating to that, there was some interesting planning updates from Michael Gove, who obviously heads up the whole of that department, and he said that he assured MPs that he would not be abandoning the government's proposed planning white paper changes, because he thinks that there are some things in there that everybody thinks are sensible, but clearly he's going to change some of it. He also was very keen to see communities have a greater say over new developments. And interestingly, he said that the impact of permitted development is going to be considered as part of the planning system review. And he said it's going to, he's going to be looking at how PD fits in, and also he was going to look at about things like Section 106 and infrastructure still contributions with regards to PD. So it looks like a few things under review or going to be relating to PD in what comes out in the early part of next year. So we await that with bated breath. But there you go. That was the news.
I think all these things that's going on with planning, and I was at a conference yesterday speaking at one, and there was a discussion there, and it's about getting in now. One of the speakers said, you know, this is the optimum time. You know, if they start playing around with the PD rules, fine, but you know, they're probably not going to make them any easier. They might make them a bit more difficult. So if you're out there, I mean, we're going to talk about, you know, doing development the right way in a minute, but if you're out there thinking about getting into development, I mean, this is the time. It genuinely is. You want to be thinking about, let's start moving and take advantage of this. Okay, excellent. Some good news items. So shall I do a little bit of talking on tonight's subject?
We'll go on then.
Okay, so we're talking about people going about development the wrong way. Okay, that is a problem. We see it time and time again. In our opinion, my opinion of what people are doing, I think is wrong, and they get into difficulties, and they don't need to be in those difficulties. And I think the thing about development is, well, it should be highly leveraged. And the problem that a lot of people do, they get stuck in at the coalface. And you've heard this many a time, probably this sort of saying is you just end up with another job. You know, a lot of people that come into property, they leave their commercial career, they leave that job because they want to work for themselves. And they end up working more hours and often more stressed than what they were when they were in the corporate world. So what's the point of that? And of course, what they often then find comes with that. They talk about development being really difficult, and it's just, you know, we're just not making it work. Well, no, it is difficult. It is difficult, but don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be. That's the absolute key. And you know, we train a certain way because I've been in this industry nearly 40 years, and I know the way that this works. It's not just, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we try this out? This is why sometimes I go on a rant when people don't listen, because there is an approach to how you make development a lot easier. So we're going to touch on that tonight. And for some of you, you'll know this, okay? For some of you, a lot of our students are on this evening, you'll know this anyway, but maybe it's a refresher, so I don't rant off at you when you next come to our next event. For some of you that are completely new, give us a hands up, actually, if you're completely new to Open Door Webinar Show. Give us a hands up. Yeah, do you know, there's a good few people on here completely new this evening, so welcome, welcome. And I'm sure there's quite a few people that haven't really done property yet. Give us a hands up if you've not done property development. So you might be a regular on the show here, but you've not done any property development. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, even more, absolutely. So, you know, I'm not going to say who they are. I'm not going to read any names out, but I know who you are. I can see you. So, you know, from that point of view, just listen in terms of the right way to do it. And the thing is, when we talk about leverage, we want you to leverage the skills. Now, lot of you would have heard this. If you're completely new to us, you wouldn't have done. But it's worth repeating this. It's about the skills that you need to operate in this business and use them fully. Organizational, management, decision-making skills. Those three sets of skills really come to the foreground when you're trying to be a developer, when you're trying to run a development company. Okay, management is management generally of other people. You know, decision-making skills is when people are bringing you options and you've got to make a decision of it. Organizational skills, in the respect we're talking about here, is organizing people to do things. None of those things is talking about you doing everything. Now, I know a lot of people see, I can see it's a step up from you know, having to do a buy-to-let refurb, so you know, I'm not having to worry too much about electricians and plasterers. Sure, and of course, if you hadn't thought of that, that's definitely the case. You don't need to worry about the individual trades. But too many people get too involved in a subject, into the detail that they know nothing about. Okay, they don't sit at the top of the tree. They don't sit there and take that overview looking in. So not fully utilizing those skills, which perhaps they utilized in their previous businesses. You know, I've seen some pretty senior, you know, chief exec management, you know, commercial, corporate management people that's come in, held some pretty high positions, you know, with several hundred people underneath them. They get into development and they're not utilizing those skills. You know, when they were sat in their office in their large corporate world, they didn't run around and start trying to fix the photocopier. You know, they didn't try and negotiate the photocopier contract. Why would they? There's people that know more how to do those things. They looked at the overall strategy. They looked about where the business was going to come from. So why regress? Why not stick at that position? Because that absolutely is where you need to be. And what we're talking about is trying to make property development a whole lot easier. So take those skills, use them at the level that you're expected to use them at. And then the fourth one that we always add to that is people skills. Okay, it is fundamental. It is probably the absolute key skill. It's been able to read people, kind of get people to do things, coach people. You have to be a leader. Okay, you have to be a natural leader. You have to have something about you. I remember going back, not about being conceited, but to share this story. Someone said, when you walk in the room, we know you're the MD. So when I was the MD of several companies, they said, you just act like an MD. And you folks have heard me talk about this before, about acting like an MD, but it's carrying that whole thing up. You know, it's holding your shoulders up, your head high, having that confidence. The trouble is you probably had that confidence when you're in the corporate world, and now you've regressed again, like not using the skills. Have that confidence to deal with the people, because the thing is, when you want people to believe and trust in you and follow you, which is what we want as leaders, they need to see that you believe in yourself. And of course, you can't start getting people to do things, you know, and using those skills if they don't believe in you. So the whole people skills revolves around all of that. It's you and how you interact with other. Okay, so important thing, use those skills in the right way. And then it is this acting as the CEO. I think something that seems to be very different that we talk about and no one else does in the industry. And when I'm talking about the industry, I'm talking about the training industry. And I'm not surprised in lots of ways. I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. And I think the reason I'm not surprised is because the majority of people that we hear about, I mean, we don't go on other training courses, but what we hear a lot of people, that people just try to train you a strategy. We're going to teach you a strategy, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure that's done very well. But you're just learning one part of the process. You're just learning how to develop new build land. Well, that's okay, but it's not the big picture. You know, you haven't been taught how to be a developer. Yesterday, someone was asking me at this conference I was at. They said, "So what do you teach? How does it work? How do you teach us?" I said, "Well, I teach you to be a developer." "Yeah, I know that, but how do you?" I said, "Well, I teach you to run a development company. We teach you to run a business, to know all the moving parts of that business and how it works." And they started to get it. They went, "Oh, right." So he said, "I've never been told how to run a business, let alone a property development business." And what you're telling me is that actually, when I'm properly trained, I could go and do land development. I said, "Yes." He said, "And I could like convert commercial buildings into residential with the permitted developments you were just talking about? I went, yes. And he said, and I could do commercial work as well, make commercial units and sell them on or up. Yes, of course you can. You're a developer, and it's the developer that looks for deals. So you must not be restricted in certain areas, and you must act as a CEO. Take those skill sets, not skill sets. That's bad. Don't cut that out of the recording. It's not that sort of show. Okay. Don't need any comments in the chat box over that one as well. So the important thing is that you take that on board. Okay. You act and control the business at a high level, and that's where your confidence comes in. I see someone's put in the chat box. I think it's a fear of failure. The fear of failure comes in, I think, because people, if you don't know what you don't know, that's a problem. When you know what you don't know, and you have that gives you the confidence to go and do this, but it's operating at the right level. Because if you operate at the wrong level, you're down at the coalface, and with all due respect, most of you are never going to have enough time to learn everything at the coalface. Okay, because I doubt any of you are that young. I mean, I started very young, as you can tell, because I've been in it 40 years, so very young. But the thing is, okay, that you got to get yourself into a position where you are controlling things. You let things go beneath you to those that know what's going on. You can't control everything. You're never going to know everything. If you're in the corporate world and the photocopier went wrong, I mean, did you ever consider, I mean, I never did. Did I ever consider picking up a screwdriver and thinking, I'll have a go at trying to fix that? Maybe it's the cartridge. Of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't even think about that. You would have never ordered paper. If I need some paper, get someone to order. You don't even know where the paper comes from. I mean, was it 80, 90 gram? Was it photocopier paper? Was it printed paper? I don't know why I know so much about paper, but do you know what I mean? You wouldn't have got down to that level. So why would you be down there in development and thinking, right, well, what about the boiler? What about the electrics? How do get people to work with you? Get people to advise you up the chain, and just think of being that CEO. Think of being at that top level, because that's probably where you've been before, even in a high management position. I'm not necessarily a chief exec, but if you've been in that high management position, using all your skills, okay, that's what will make development a lot easier. Getting down at the coalface is the wrong way. That's when you're starting to make decisions that you can't possibly make. You're trying to analyze information that you can't possibly understand, or even worse, you understand a little bit of it and you think you understand all of it, but you don't know what you don't know, so you make the wrong decision. That happens so many times, that people are coming unstuck with their contracts, the control of the contractor, the control of the cost of the project, the control of the timescale of the project. The consultants aren't performing how they should be performing. I didn't get the sales values I wanted. The agent really wasn't on top of their game. Because all of these, I mean, you're dealing with lots of different people, thousands of moving parts in development. You have to see it as a system and a process that you sit at the top and you're pressing the buttons and getting the right people doing the right thing. Got to know the process and the system and sit at the top and do this in the right way. We use the analogy a lot, and I think it's important to, for those that are new, this will be good for you. For those that are with us, and that is to refresh this principle of being the cabinet minister. Ian was just talking about ministers and planning and that sort of thing, and the ministers move around. Okay, they move around to different departments, and not at one stage do any of these cabinet ministers, and I don't think they have a single bit of interest. When I'm not being disrespectful, I don't think these cabinet ministers have a single bit of interest of getting down to the coalface and really understanding their department in detail. Yeah, they go on a photo shoot if they're minister in charge of health, and they're put on some overalls and they'll be in a brand new hospital and doing something, and like Boris goes to some factory and makes cakes or whatever they do. That's all PR. Is that getting them? Are they understanding their business? Which their business is the ministerial department. Of course they're not. They don't need to. They're working at the right level, because all the time that they would spend and you would spend down at the coalface trying to understand in detail because you think you need to, or maybe your ego says you think you want to, you're not really doing the job as a CEO. Let's take the CEO of a lot of these large organizations out there. If those CEOs are down fixing the photocopier or ordering the paper, they're not doing the job they're supposed to do, are they? It wouldn't work. And it's the same, Ian and I here, you know, for those that work with us know that we have a support team around us. Now, if Ian and I had to do the support team job or fully, I mean, do you know, we wouldn't get anything done. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we have probably about 12 trillion bits of software that all talk to each other. I don't know how they do it. I've no idea. I mean, I've got a computer in front of me and I've got a whole temporary studio that I plug in the cables, but I don't actually know how that screen I don't take the back of this laptop off to make sure how it connects. I just plug it in because someone's told me that's what to do. The software works in the background because we have people that say that's how it's going to work. I operate, as Ian does, we operate as joint CEOs of this business. We have an activity to train you, but you get it. If we wouldn't have time to do this, we say, sorry, we can't come on open door tonight because we're having to fix the photocopier. It's madness, isn't it? And so when we go back to these ministerial departments, you can see that they don't need to go down to the bottom, and nor do you, but they need to know enough about it to make it work. And with all of this, it's about getting credibility. The last point I'm going to talk about tonight is just getting this credibility. This is where it goes wrong, because the minute you lose credibility, I tell you what happens, you get screwed over. Now, that's not a rude word. I think I can say that, but you do. This is where people will see that you're not up to your game. The contractors are in this business a lot of the time, and not all of them. But you know, if there's a weakness there, if they see an opportunity, because they've got to maximize their profit, why would they not do it on your project? You're not on top of your game. You know, architects maybe as well. You know, you've got to have that credibility. And the minute a CEO starts going down and fixing the photocopier, his credibility, her credibility is gone. Okay, you've got to look like the CEO, you've got to act like a CEO. That's the way you have to operate. And if you operate in that way and have that team of people around you, your project manager, your architects, your structural engineers, and importantly, your non-exec advisor, then you are going to have that credibility as sitting at the top of the tree. And you're not having to blag. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer. It's okay to say, I'll get back to you. I'll find that out, because that's what a good CEO does. You know, they don't, oh, what's wrong with the photocopier? Oh, I don't know, but let me just get underneath it and try and, no. Okay. So the important thing, to sum up, and I can see some questions coming in, so we're going to get to them in a second. Okay. The important thing here, in terms of if you want to develop property successfully, and I don't know why you wouldn't, because it's a great opportunity out there, okay? In a way, it's easier than you think. Please don't think it's easy, because it's hard. Now, that all might sound like a complete contradiction, and Clapton doesn't know what he's talking about, okay? But it's probably easier than what you think if you go about it in the right way. Don't go about it in the wrong way. Don't start getting down the coalface. Don't make those same mistakes that everyone else makes. If you want to make it a lot easier, take that position, act as a CEO, use those skill sets that we talk about, think of it being a cabinet minister, get that credibility, and I tell you, life will be a lot easier. That was sort of a mild rant, but I just sort of framed it in a bit of positivity as well. What do you think? How did that come across, Ian?
I thought that was fine. Yeah, fairly mild for you. And also, I think everybody perked up when you started mentioning skill sets. There've been a lot of students have been on the course, desperately trying to find that module. Disappointment lies ahead, I'm afraid. But no, all very good advice.
Good stuff. Give us a hands up if you thought that little bit of information was useful this evening. Give us a hands up. Oh, yeah, quite a few people. Good. That's good. So, I mean, they might have put their hands up and said, no, you're ranting too much, but I'm not going to ask that question. So, have we got time to do some questions, Ian? If you've got anything to kick off with, and I'll have a look through. You've probably seen some coming in.
I have. I've got a few here. So we've got one in from Sam. Good evening, Sam. How realistic is it to get agents to deal with you straight away if you have never done development before? Ooh. Okay. Agents typically looking for two things. They're looking for a good offer from you, fairly obviously, but they're also looking for proceedability. And their biggest problem is if they accept a good offer, but then further down the line, the deal falls out of bed because the buyout turned out not to be proceedable or turned out to be a bit flaky. And you need both of those things really if you're going to win a deal. So obviously one of the things we do is teach people how to create that brand that Richie referred to. So when agents then check you out, which they will do, you look the part. You know, you've got a website behind you, you've got a brand, you've got business cards. You're kind of, even though you as a CEO, this may be your first project, everything behind you looks really strong. And also they may even be able to see members of your kind of professional team as well. Again, you're not designing the project, you're not laying the bricks. There's a team here that have done it many times over that actually you're going to be relying on to deliver that. So that goes a long way to basically giving you that proceedability, giving you that credibility with the agents. I would say the other thing that you need to do is make sure you've kind of nailed your elevator pitch. So it's really just about talking with confidence and enthusiasm and knowledge about what it is that you're looking to do. Be able to talk about your business, your strategy, why you, what it is that you're doing, who you're working with, etc., etc. So that again, when you're having those conversations with agents, you just come across, like the CEO of a development company. Again, it's not about blagging. It's not about making up any kind of like, oh, I've inventing loads of projects that you worked on. Absolutely the opposite. Never blag. But it's absolutely possible. Do a little bit of groundwork to kind of build that credibility behind you, because agents will go and they'll want to get that confidence that you're proceedable. So absolutely no problem. If you're ticking those two boxes, you've got a good offer and you look proceedable, then you've got every chance of winning a deal.
Sam, there you go. And Sam, just to put a couple of things, there's a few comments in the chat box here, Sam, to help you. So Jenny's said in there, we're always going to fail if we don't try. So, that's one thing there, Sam. You've got to try. You've got to go and do it. And if at first you don't succeed, then have another go. Hanson's Estates is on. So I'm not sure who we've got on from Hanson's Estates. I could guess, but I'm not going to suggest. It says, evening, gents, and great advice, Richie, as always. And Rory says, blunt and direct. I love it. Well, there you go. That's what we've got to be. You've got to tell you how it is. There's no point us giving you this advice. We put this show on for you, okay? I mean, we sort of quite enjoy doing it anyway. Not much on the TV on a Thursday night, not until 8 o'clock, and we can go and watch it then anyway. But we just as well tell you how it is. It's Gerd. Hello, Gerd. I thought it might be you. Gerd's on from Hanson Estates. He's advertising Hanson Estates. I'm not going to say that any more times. Anyway, because otherwise we'd be charging, wouldn't we, like a support fee or something like that, sponsorship fee. Anyway, that aside, I think it's important that we give you this straight advice, because if you're thinking about getting development, you need to know what to do. And Ursula's got a comment on there. I have no experience of the corporate world or managing large budgets, feeling a bit underskilled. I guess that's a bit of a question, although it looks like a statement. I think here, look, you don't have to have corporate world experience. That's not what it's about. It's not about managing large budgets. We talk about small scale property development, and that's a long way from the corporate world. What it is, Ursula, it's about those skill sets. So have you been in any management positions? Have you managed a branch for an estate agency or something like that? Have you managed a coffee shop? It could be anything. It could be anything that you've had, that you've done something where maybe you've organized people. Maybe you've managed people, whether you've had to make a decision. Of course, by default, you've had to deal with people. So if you've got those skills, it doesn't have to be at corporate level. Okay, we're not talking, I mean, we are talking reasonable size numbers, maybe numbers bigger than what maybe you've done if you were running a coffee shop. But if you understand how to do it, those numbers shouldn't become scary. So don't necessarily feel underskilled. I mean, I'll tell you what we'll do, Ursula, at the end, we'll tell you something if you want to come and join us for a few hours and dip your toe in the water and have spend a few hours with us for no cost, and just start to understand whether you feel underskilled. I'll give you a link at the end just to do that. But hopefully that helps. Ian, have you got another question that we can answer?
Fantastic. Yes, I've got one here from Jane. Good evening, Jane. Do you have to employ all of these professionals that you mentioned? Because I am not sure how I can do that before I have the work. Okay, so the professionals that we're talking about here, so this is like your architect, project manager, cost consultant, structural engineer, and so on. Basically, you select them, you do your due diligence on them to bring them into your team, but ultimately they're not employed by you. When you have a development project, typically you will set up what's called an SPV, so a special purpose vehicle. It's basically a limited company, which is brand new, fresh out of the box, and that basically is then the entity that kind of employs everybody, and everything relating to the project happens within that SPV. Obviously, you'll be part of that SPV, but then you're going to be hiring these people, and effectively they are going to start working on the project through the SPV as and when the project gets going. So basically, what you're doing out of the blocks is trying to find people that fit that brief. So you've got a team in place in terms of your preferred partners for each of the disciplines. I'd say also a good idea is to have a plan B certainly for some of the major roles, because of course you could find yourself in a situation where you've got a great architect that you think would be perfect for this project, but when your project arrives, they're busy on something else, like ditto maybe a project manager. So make sure you've got a bit of depth in cover in the ranks. But basically, you're choosing those out of the blocks. You don't need to have a specific project in mind to go and show them when you meet with them and try and do that kind of beauty parade and due diligence. You can do, but I would say better to get them lined up beforehand, so that you're talking in principle about the sort of projects that you're going to be working on and looking for them to do, and then you've got the names in the frame for that team. You're certainly not going to be paying them a retainer or employing them in the background before you've got a project, and you can then bring them into the project once it starts. Jane, I hope that helps. Good stuff.
We talked about negotiating skills. Jenny said being a parent helps you develop great negotiating skills. It's true, and actually it's a good corporate thing as well, because it costs you a fortune. And she's gone and put, and it's Jenny, by the way, from 65 Properties. Like, it's not an advertising show. It's not a free advertising show that you can come on and just give your companies out. I mean, anyone would think that Ranjit's on from Property Investor News. In fact, he is, and he's turned up 10 minutes late. But I'm not going to mention that he's from Property Investor News, because we wouldn't want to advertise that, even though we are in that magazine at the moment every month doing an article. So I'm not going to give Ranjit a shout out, definitely not. Okay, got a question here from Karen. Karen says, interesting ideas on development tonight. Well, thank you, Karen. We thought so. I'm new to this and thinking of I saw your hand go up. Yeah, I'm thinking of starting straight into development. Oh my word, and not buy to lets, etc. Do you think this is possible? Wow. Do you know what, Jane? Not Jane, Karen. We just done Jane. There's Karen here. Karen, do you know what, Karen? There's a lot of people that would frown upon that, because they tell you you've got to start with a bit of sourcing, rent to rent, buy to lets, HMO, service departments, and if you're really lucky, you can do the advanced strategy of property development. They're just a load of old BS, Karen. That is just fluff. You don't need to do that. Yes, you can definitely just start in development. Now, you might not have heard that, but I'm putting it out there for those that have done. Yes, it's possible. Development is just a business. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you feel that you need to get some cash flow, and some people do. They want to get cash flow from buy-to-lets. I would say, if I was going to be a little bit cynical, okay, what you're going to do, get a buy-to-let. How long is that going to take you? And you might earn £300 to £400 out of a buy-to-let. Whoopee, that's not going to pay your bills, is it? You know, how many of those have you got to get? Okay, well, let's assume you need £3,000 a month to live on, which most people do. Well, that's 10 buy-to-lets you've got to get cash flow and £300 a month. What about voids, all those tenants and stuff? And you've got to deal with all of those. That's 10 buy-to-lets. And how long is that going to take you? How long is that going to take you? So actually, why not just do one development, make £250,000, say, for argument's sake, in maybe 2 or 3 years' time? Well, is that not better? Then you could go out and buy 5 buy-to-lets straight away. I mean, I don't know. Is that not a better route? You tell me. Maybe it is. But yes, Karen, you can definitely just start as a developer. You know, it's like, it would be foolish, wouldn't it be foolish to say, I want to open a restaurant. Okay, I'd love to open a restaurant. I'm going to train as a chef, and someone says, no, you can't open a restaurant. You need to open a sandwich bar first of all, but a mobile one to start with, in a small van. Go around the builders' yards, and then if you get good at that, then you can get a small shop, and you can do hot pies as well. And then if you're really good, well, maybe you could open a kebab shop or a fried chicken shop. And if you're really good, you can have a sit-down restaurant. How ridiculous would that be? You just wouldn't do it, would you? So if you want to be a developer, be a developer. Absolutely, Karen. It is totally possible. Just need to know what you don't know. Almost went off on another little rant again. I'm sort of in that mood this evening. Ian, what's the next question?
I don't know. I'm feeling quite hungry now, actually. This one's from Tracy. Tracy says, sorry, good evening, Tracy. You've mentioned we shouldn't pretend to be experienced. Surely the professionals need to think we can do this. Otherwise, why would they bother with us? Okay, the credibility thing, it's not about the experience, being an experienced developer. If people only ever dealt with people that had experience, then of course property developers would have died out a long time ago. So the thing to kind of bear in mind here is that when people look at new developers, what tends to happen with new developers is that kind of one or two things. Either they do a development and it either goes well or it doesn't. And if it goes well, a lot of developers then go on and do another project. It makes sense, just kind of rinse and repeat. And so whether it's your professional team, whether it's an estate agent, whether it's a lender or an investor, they're kind of looking at new developers through the same lens, which is that that there's an opportunity here for sure, for an opportunity, a new opportunity today, but then potentially, if it's a good relationship, they've kind of got in at ground level and have now got the prospect of doing business with you on your other deals. I mean, certainly that's the premise of building this team, where after you've done your first project, you've now got a great team together that you've worked with before. Everybody knows everybody else, and you're in a good place to go on and do subsequent development. So what you're looking for, as Richie said earlier, is for those kind of core skills, the CEO skills we call them, which are broadly generic, business, organization, decision making and people skills. And as I will, at the risk of repeating myself, I would say though that when it comes to that thing about what you look like, that branding is also important, making sure that the kind of the back end of what you're doing looks your shop window looks professional, irrespective of the fact that you haven't done any developments before. But no, you'll find that professionals and other people in the industry are keen to work with you, because frankly they can spend your money in Tesco's just as well as anybody else's, and you're a potential customer of the future. So I would definitely be approaching it in that way. Hope that helps, Tracy.
Good stuff. Do you know, I'm not sure what this show is turning into, because now I've got Rory O'Mara. I can mention his name because Rory's been a guest of ours on the show, and because I mentioned Ranjit from Property Investor News that he was late, and I said I wouldn't mention him because he was late. Rory said I was on time. It's Rory from closedbridgingfinance.com. Yeah, put it all in there, Rory. Why not? Free advertisement for you as well. Actually, he's a great guy out there. Do look him up. He was one of our previous open door shows. Couldn't tell you which number off the top of my head. And we might get him back one day if he behaves himself and stops trying to advertise on a free show for the evening. Okay, John's got a question. I've got to get John's question here. John, hello. John says, what sort of size would you recommend for your first development? I'm thinking like a small house doer-upper and a flip. Would I be right? No, John, you won't be right. That's not John. I'm off on another rant. Are you putting this in? I don't. Well, I know who. No, actually, no, I don't know who John is. No, John, you might be new to us, so I'm not going to rant too much, John. But John, no, it's not. It's not a house doer-upper and a flip. Okay, that's not development. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I was chatting to someone the other day, and they were saying, "Oh, you're going to do a house doer-upper and a flip type thing." And I said, "Okay, how much are you going to make out of that? About 30 grand?" He went, "Yeah, about 30." 30,000, but 30,000 could quickly go to 15 if you get that wrong. I said, how long is that going to take? He said, well, I don't know, 12, 18 months. Time to get in, get it sorted, buy it, get it. It's going to take you 12 months probably. You might be lucky to do it in 6, but probably not sell it with the way the legal process is going. But for 20, 30 grand, it's not worth it, John. What about in just a little bit longer time scale? What if you said, well, actually, I'm going to do, 18 months to 2 years. I can make 200 grand. That's development, okay? And I'm not. It's not just 200, but I want to be in 6-figure sums. If I'm going to do development, John, I want to be in a 6-figure sums. And it's not a big step up from what you're doing. It is in terms of the approach, which is what I was talking about tonight, John. It's about being the CEO. You're going to do a doer-upper. There's no money in that to afford a project manager, okay? No money to do that. You've got to be in a position there where you're going to manage all of the plastering and the plumbers and the buying the kitchen down at Howden's. Obviously other kitchen suppliers are available. They're not getting an advertisement tonight, I can tell you that. Okay, not unless I get a cheap kit. Well, I don't want a cheap kitchen from Howdens, do I? No, they're not getting any advertising. Don't use Howdens. Well, but if you want, you can. But you know, we could get sued, couldn't we? Unbelievable. So, John, when you move up to development, and I might be talking about maybe a minimum of 5 units. That's what we talk about, small scale development, a minimum of 5 units. If you go and do 5 units, you're going to be earning at least a good 6-figure sum. That's the sort of thing. And we're talking about significantly adding value to something, okay? One of my screens has just fallen over. That's unbelievable, isn't it? It's worth being a mobile unit, the technology is all falling in on me. So, John, 5 units or so, taking an existing building, converting it, adding significant value, not just a paint and a bit of kitchen. That's where you want to be doing. That's a good place to start. Hopefully, John, that makes sense. I'm on a bit of a roll. Shall I pick another one up? You happy? You're silent. I can't hear you. Have you muted yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Do you know, that's the best open door show when actually you're muted. Mute yourself again. I'll carry on. So I've got a question here from you know, you're muted. You're out of it now. You've decided to turn yourself on. I'm going to pick Sophie's question up. Sophie says, hypothetically, if Ian was muted for the rest of the show, would it be the best show ever? Yes, Sophie. No, Sophie actually says, if you are starting and already have £250,000 cash, but have no employment, so potentially hard to get a mortgage, would you advise to aim for cash flow first before development? Would it be too much to do all at the same time? Okay, look, Sophie. So I think what I'm understanding here, you've got £250,000 cash, no employment. You've got to live off of that, survive off of that, and get development going. Now, it's a matter of preference of what you want to do. I probably wouldn't be doing too much at once because that could get complicated. If you've got £250,000 cash, Sophie, what you could work out is if you want to build a basic buy-to-let portfolio, how far is that going to get you? Now, I don't know. Let's assume that there's £50,000 deposit required for each property. Then there's 5 properties, and let's assume it was £300 cash flowing out of each one. Well, you know, 3 times 5 is 1,500 quid. Maybe it's 5 times 5 is 2.5 grand if you got £500 out of each one. Is that enough? Is that now? I'm assuming you've amassed £250,000. You probably earned more than £1,500 a month in your time doing that. I'm going to suggest. Okay, maybe not. Doesn't matter. So that's one scenario to look at. Does that feel appealing? Or what about, Sophie, if you could say, right, take 50,000 of that, leverage that in a development, and let's say it took you 2 years. Okay, 2 years from now. Let's say it take you 3 years if you want. I don't mind. And out at the back of that, in 3 years' time, you come out with a 250,000 profit and your original 50,000 back. Okay, could you then live off the 200,000 over the next 3 years? And I suggest you can. Well, I don't know, Sophie. I don't know what your lifestyle is, but assuming you can, because it's a lot more than cash flowing out of 5 properties, then I would say that's the better way to go. Because otherwise, all that cash, and I've seen people do this. I've seen people do this with little lumps of inheritance. And they piled it into some buy-to-let portfolio. They've got a bit of cash flow, and now they're all stuck because they can't refinance because the market's not growing that quick. Particularly if they buy up north, there's no real increase in the capital value. Can't get their money out. They're cash flowing some peanuts money a month. Can't really live off it. They oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Okay, we talk around this. We talk about the developer landlord. We talk about, if you haven't read our book, talk about Esmeralda in there. There's a great book out there on industrial conversions. Go on Amazon, it's our book. Read that. It'll tell you a bit more. But look alternative about doing a development, putting 50,000 into that, leveraging your way to £250,000. You're going to be, in my opinion, in a stronger position. Can you do development? That's the question. Maybe come and spend a half day with us, Sophie, and see what you find out. What do you think, Ian? Are you muted or unmuted now?
I've decided to unmute myself. I was just waiting for Howden solicitors to get in touch, but they haven't as yet.
Good stuff. I'm not allowed to talk about industrial conversions anymore. Damien, one of our students, has told me not to talk about that because otherwise too many people will know about it. So forget industrial conversions. Anyone that's listening, they are totally down for Damien. They are rubbish. Don't do them. There you go, Damien. Do you want to do one more quick question, Ian? Have you got a quick one there we could do?
Got a quick one. One from Richard. Hi, Richard. Where would I find these professionals? Google search. Well, certainly you can start with a Google search if you don't have any professionals in mind. I think the key thing, though, is kind of twofold. One is to try and get as many recommendations as you can. If you don't know anybody in any of the professional spheres, then certainly starting off on Google is not a bad place to start. But then as soon as you start having meetings or conversations with these professionals, get recommendations for other industries, other professionals in other disciplines, so that you can start building up a bit of a framework and a knowledge base of who's hot and who's not in your area. I think the other thing that you've got to do is make sure you do your due diligence. Their websites all look fantastic. They all talk a good talk, but ultimately you want to kick the tires a bit harder than that. You want to make sure that you're drilling down, talking to clients, and particularly for people like contractors and maybe architects as well. Go and have a look at projects that they've got on the go at the moment and ones they've completed recently, so that you're really kind of making sure that you've kicked the tires pretty hard before you appoint these people. But certainly if you don't know where to start, then yeah, you've got to start somewhere. Google can certainly be your friend, but then make sure that you're asking people for recommendations. I hope that helps, Richard.
Good stuff, Richard. Hope you got that. Sophie says, she said, thanks a lot. We've already signed up to your December 3-day event. Oh, Sophie, look forward to seeing you there. Look, I did say earlier, I know a couple of people mentioned a couple of things on there. If you want to come and spend a completely free half day with us, we've got a workshop which we run called Six-Figure Roadmap. There's various availabilities. I think we're going to do one on Saturday, I think this week, isn't it, Ian? Saturday we've got one. Next week.
We have, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's one next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. If you're interested, propertyceo.co.uk, write this down, /SFR. propertyceo.co.uk /SFR. You can come and spend 3 hours with us. It's about 2.5, 3 hours. I'm not going to promise it's definitely 3 hours. Come and spend a bit of time with us, over 2 hours, and we'll dip your toe in the water and see what you think. You might well enjoy that. Okay. Well, you enjoyed that, Ian?
I loved it. I loved you. I thought you were going to go off on one about 4 times, but you managed to pull it back, even when your computer fell over. Not quite sure why it fell over, but there we go.
Yeah, well, one of the screens fell over, but it's okay. It's okay now. Anyway, look, folks, if you have enjoyed the show, as always, please pop it in the chat box. Let us know as we wrap up the show. Obviously, if we don't have any nice comments in the chat box, we are not coming back again. But look, here's the good news and the bad news. And I'm going to have to break this to you gently. First, I'm going to give the good news. The good news is next show is next Thursday, the 25th of November at 7 o'clock. But look, brace yourselves for this. And I know this is going to be tough for you to take. But I don't know how you're going to get through this. But I'm going to just have to tell you, it's going to be next week, the last show of the year, the last show of 2021. You're going to have to survive December without us. Now, counselling services are available, out there through the NHS. Please take advantage of them and try and get through. If anyone wants a picture of us to put on the mantelpiece, pop onto the website, download an image, put it up on the mantelpiece, and just look at us throughout December. I'm sure that'll get you by. Anyway, so we will see you. Someone's put the lazy sods. You can't say that. Just because we're having December off, we work all year. Anyway, let's see what they did. Another great session, says Jenny. Good to see you. Great session as always, guys. Great show, gent, says Dan. Slackers, says Tanya. Really slackers? Are you not? What's about it? You just got to turn up and listen. We've got to prepare for this. I'm in a hotel. I could be in the bar drinking downstairs, and I've come onto the open door. Stop having a go at me. Ramika says thank you. That's nice. Ramika, one of our friends. Thank you. Very helpful, says Ursula. It was my first show. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. I start the fast track course next week. Really looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you on fast track. That'd be good. Like the energy and the humour. See you next week, says Philip. Jitan says great stuff, guys. Wonderful works, gents. 10 out of 10, says Rory. Love the joke, says Jitan. And Cheryl says thank you. Cheryl, that's the best way to do it. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you, everyone else, apart from all those that were rude. See you next week. Good night now. Bye-bye.
Bye.